Video 5.7 AWS SNS. In this video, we will cover the following topics. What is AWS SNS? What are the advantages and use cases of SNS? What is SNS pub/sub? What is SNS mobile notification? What are SNS topics and topic policies? Demo of SNS. Hello. In this video, we'll learn the basics of AWS's Simple Notification Service. Simple Notification Service is a push notification service that lets you target recipients referred to as endpoints by AWS. You can have messages delivered to two different types of endpoints using a single API call. It also helps you in situations where microservices need to talk to each other. Advantages and use cases of SNS. SNS is a flexible, fully managed pub/sub messaging and mobile communication service. It coordinates the delivery of messages to subscribing endpoints and clients. With SNS, it is easy to set up, operate, and send reliable communication. It allows us to decouple and scale microservices, distributed systems, and serverless applications. Publish or subscribe messaging or pub/sub messaging is a form of asynchronous service-to-service communication used in serverless and microservices architectures. In a pub/sub model, any message published to a topic is immediately received by all of the subscribers to the topic. This messaging can enable event-driven architectures or to decouple applications in order to increase performance, reliability, and scalability. So what are SNS topic and topic policies? SNS topic is where we actually create subscriptions for push notifications, and in topic policies, we set the security configurations of the topic. Now let us get hands-on with SNS. Go to the Management Console and search for SNS. You can view the topics that I have already created. Now click on Create New Topic. Enter name of topic, display name, and click on Create Topic. You can view the created topic here. Now click on Create Subscription. Select Protocol. For this demo, I am choosing Email. Now enter the email address you wish to receive notifications from SNS and click on Create Subscription. You can see the status as pending confirmation here. Go to Mail Received and confirm subscription. As you refresh, you can see the confirmed status. Now let us test SNS with S3. Go to the Management Console and go to S3. Go to one of the previously created buckets and click on Properties. Go to Events and click on Add Notification. Enter name, events you wish to notify, notification destination, and SNS. Now click on Save. As you create or delete objects, we shall receive email through SNS. This brings us to the end of this video. Summary. In this video, we have covered the following topics. What is AWS SNS? What are the advantages and use cases of SNS? What is SNS pub/sub? What is SNS mobile notification? What are SNS topics and topic policies? Demo of SNS. In the next video, we will take a look at the Amazon CloudWatch.